I'm here in Miami with Chaplain, Lieutenant Colonel Shlomo Shulman. It's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Same
How have
here.
you been?
Let's see. I am the base chaplain in a base called Mihail Koganichano Air Base. It's an Romanian air base in Romania, in the little village of Mihail Koganichano, Romania.
And how's that been? What's that experience been like?
It's been great. It's been great. It's really the tip of the spear. I mean, the Ukrainian border is probably an hour's drive north of us. The Danube River marks the border with Ukraine, and this is where the fighting's going on. I mean, obviously you don't hear it from where we are. You probably wouldn't even hear it if you went to the Danube River, but you look on the news, and that's where everything's going. Russia rocket attacks, including some of those cities, Odessa and Izmail, which are right in that southeastern corner of Ukraine. So it's a hot spot, but at the same time, it's not Ukraine. So we're in Romania, and it's a NATO country, and people nobody's wearing body armor or weapons or anything like that. Romanians are very friendly. We have French forces, Italians, British, Belgians, and Romanians. They're also.
What's the vibe like when you know that there's a hot war just across the border, and at any moment it can tick over to where you guys are? But at present, it's just Romania.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different ball game from what we saw in the Middle East, where the insurgents were firing, like very simple rockets that, if it wasn't a God forbid, a direct hit, didn't really cause so much. Not that it wasn't scary, but this is, you're talking about Russia, and I mean, who knows what? I mean, this is like a peer-to-peer adversary, as they call it. So it's sobering to know that this war that you read about in the news every day is it can't really get any closer, for sure a lot in a military base or an allied military base. So it's sobering. It's definitely something you keep on your mind. But it's kind of like living in Israel, where or New York or something, where you read about dangers, but you don't really feel it necessarily, at least not like walking down the street in the middle of the day. But it's there. You see these bunkers, and there's still reports of activities and stuff that you have to get briefed on, because there are things that you just don't make the news that Russia tries tries out on us. So and cell phone messages, and when these cheapo SIM cards, and you get these Russian text messages and things. I mean, it is right there.
Wow. So, what's it like from a life to life, day-to-day perspective when you walk outside and you're walking, driving around Romania or so on and so forth?
It's Romania is coming off of the communist period, slowly, but coming off of it. I mean, there, all kinds of new companies and malls, and you see Starbucks and Taco Bell, and capitalism is coming back. It's coming. But at the same time, it is definitely not at the level of like Prague or these places that have shed their old. The place is littered with these old-fashioned communist apartment buildings everywhere. Every little town has just got stacks and stacks of these, kind of dumpier, old-fashioned 1970s apartment buildings that people live in. I mean, you don't see homeless people. I mean, they're living. And but it's very safe and friendly, crime-free. Romanians very pro-Western. You only get nice treatment and smiles from Romanians. But it is a lot of the people who are a little bit older don't speak English at all. The younger people learn English, and they like trying that out and everything. But it's an interesting part of Europe, because it's very basically the very far southeastern corner of Europe. The bus station in the city has a daily bus ride to Istanbul. It's about a 12-hour bus ride. Takes people to Istanbul. So it's kind of like as close as you get to the Middle East. The times I went to Israel, I saw my frequent flyer mileage. It was like 875 miles or something, they go to Israel. So it's like as close as you can get, but it is still Europe.
And you mentioned that it gives off a bit of a fiddler on the roof impression.
Right. Now, Bucharest is a huge city. I think it's about 1.8 million people. The other cities are much smaller, like 150,000, 200,000 at most. So, and then right around, and then like very stacked urban with these apartments. So right outside these towns, it just turns into, fiddler on the roof. I mean, like guys in buggies with the big bale of hay in the back, women with the shawls, like picking things in the fields, and gypsies, and guy a shepherd with his crook, a big field full of sheep. It's very, it's like Romania, like it's kind of what a lot of gypsies, so you see these little ramshackle compounds almost with lots of, they're very colorfully dressed. I mean, you could spot them right away, fascinating. There was a Jewish presence there. I mean, there's actually about a little Jewish community in the city, maybe 30, 35 older Jews left from the old days. I think once or twice a year they even get together. They get together for Pesach Seder or something, I mean, trying to find a little hotel room or something to meet in.
So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to your whoopsie daisies. I've just been deployed after just reading a pamphlet. Tell us the story of how you joined the military.
Let's see. It takes us back to about 2005, 2006. I mean, I came in January 2007. So I was working in a shul in Malden in Boston, Massachusetts, living the dream and just, surfing the internet, wondering like what the next step is. I just kind of felt I was a little bit, I don't know how much upward mobility there was. And so every once in a while, I just kind of surf around the internet and see if anything, popped up. And somehow this Chaplain, U.S. Army Chaplain website came up and looked kind of interesting, but didn't look so Jewish. And I kind of just immediately hit the send me an information packet little button that was staring like too easy to hit, and kind of forgot all about it. Just went on to the next website or whatever. And then about 2 weeks later, I get this nice pamphlet in the mail with all these very slick, advertising of chaplains. I mean, for the most part, non-Jewish, pastors and priests and, maybe it was an imam, a Muslim imam wearing his robe or something in there. And I thought, this doesn't really sound like a Jewish career. And then this guy called me, this recruiter called me. He said, I saw that you, asked for information, so I'm a recruiter. And I said, I don't think this is for me. I mean, I'm looking at I'm like Orthodox Jewish. Oh, yeah, Orthodox Jewish, sure, we need more of you. And like, well, I don't want to be the first one to do anything. No, we've got Orthodox Jews, chaplains. What are you talking about? Like, maybe I should talk to them. Sure, And it was just, I kind of sent a couple emails out, and the guy just, he gets his points for signing people up, so basically anything I asked, the answer was no problem, like a kosher food, Shabbat, no problem.
He's Googling this stuff as you're asking the question.
I'm wondering. I mean, he was like when you go you buy a car, when you walk in and you say I'm thinking about buying a car like that. Those people at the front desk, they say yes to anything. Yeah. Gray and Tesla and this,
$40 a month,
sure. Then that next level, you kind of find. So yeah, sure. The next time somebody called, and I'm like, I guess it sounds like it's a job for me. I mean, one from, and then because he mentioned this, that, and the other thing, and they're like, yeah, okay, when you a little senior, after a little while, sure, it'd probably be a little easier for you to do that. And by the time I was signing on the dotted line, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do any of that stuff. I don't know, who told you that? In the end, first of all, it is a tough for a Shomer Shabbos, Shomer, not impossible at all, but it has its challenges.
How much organizations like Aleph make a difference for you guys to be able to
now see when
and 2007, exactly.
Yeah, when I first came in, I mean, the first time I heard about Aleph, I was already signed in, just waiting to go to the basic course. And then Rabbi Katz called. Oh, I hear you're, new chaplain. And Aleph, that sounds wonderful. Like, whoa, what do you do? And so, but now where Aleph is this just, has got it all down. I mean, you can't even think back to those days where you're literally had to make a phone call, no website, no nothing, email address just went to his personal, email address. So now, you're much more confident. And you get calls all the time. Soldiers, not chaplains, soldiers saying, like I'm thinking about joining the military, but I keep kosher. Is it possible to do that? And now it's just, you just go to the website, you click on this link, it tells you what to do. There's a form for, asking for religious accommodation, which is, revolutionary, even amongst other denominations, religious denominations, to be able to, for somebody to walk in the door, click on a few links and then be taken to like the forms they actually need to download and examples and templates and who to send them to and memos and all these things. I mean, and of course you see lots more people coming in. I mean, I rarely ran into anybody back when I first came in.
So now that we've unscared everyone about listening these days, let's get back to the fun. Let's get back to what it was like when you first got to basic training. A religious rabbi rocks up, U.S. Army.
Yeah, I know what I wasn't prepared for as a guy who grew up in Beverly Hills, California, was that in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, there are Jews. There's got, I think, about 3,000 Jews in the population, but you're a minority of a minority of a minority. And I just wasn't prepared at the chaplain school that I was kind of like, I think one of the first Jewish students who'd walked in there in years. I mean, they had clearly were not prepared for, not knowledgeable about what to do with me. And even though it wasn't that difficult, it was Monday through Friday. That part of the country, Shabbos comes in relatively, 5, 6 o'clock on Friday. So even in the winter, so, you didn't really have to ask. I think the first 1 or 2 Arab Shabbos, they asked to leave early for an hour or something. Food, you went right.
Worked it all out.
Yeah, it's America. It's going into a supermarket. I mean, the rabbi had all that stuff in the stores. So the 3 months, and you're only with other chaplains. So everybody's interested in your religion. And I took a couple of years of Hebrew when I was in seminary. Maybe you could help me. But then when you get out of that basic course 3 months later, now you're in the Army. I mean, now you're the only chaplain in this unit. You are the chaplain of the unit. The other people have nothing. They don't care about religion necessarily. Don't care about your experience learning Hebrew, any of that stuff. They're in the real Army. They want you to do your job. And, of course, in the chaplaincy, you come in 6 months after you walk in the door, you're promoted to captain. So you're walking around looking like an officer who's been in the military for, 8 years, 9 years. You expect that you went to West Point or ROTC or something. And they don't know. Nobody knows how the chaplaincy works, So all of a sudden, you're supposed you look and are supposed to act like a pro, and you're just brand new to everything. So it was a learning curve. Some people probably don't have the same learning curve. I had a learning curve. I had a hard learning curve. Tell
us some of those.
I mean, well, I'll tell you, the very first day was a meeting. It just happened to be, I met the commander, and he said, we're just about to have a staff meeting. Why don't you come in and introduce yourself? So, and he happened to be a really devout Catholic commander. I mean, he was really into prayers and going to services and all that stuff. So we walk into this meeting, and he says, well, why don't we start out with a prayer? Chaplain, take it away. So I just didn't know how, I'm the sort of neutral part of, version of Jewish. I mean, you want a prayer, I got an art scroll, sitter, find a prayer for anything you want. So I kind of, froze a little bit. And of course, now this is supposed to be this is your job. What do you mean you don't know how to pray? I mean, what kind of chaplain? So I quickly flipped to, prayer for the traveler, Tefillah Derek, because that's kind of, so I just read it. Blessed are you, Hashem, God, our fathers who accepted, or So and then at the end it just says like, and I think it just says that there's no like, and here we say amen or something like that. So I just and like everybody was, are you done? Like that prayer like took a long time, and so that was this learning that I had to just watch how other people prayed, and it's like the sort of non-Jewish version of prayer. You could learn how to do like a Jewish version of the non-Jewish. But we invented the stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, like praying to God is something like backing that up. Actually, when I was in the chaplain school, so I should have known better, because in the chaplain school, like about a week into it, a guy passed out, like he got dehydrated. So a guy passed out. Everybody said, yeah, give him room. Everybody go wait in the lobby till we can get the ambulance to come. And I said, well, can we do anything for him? So it was just before they closed the door, just pray, and they closed the door. So they're like, all right, everybody, brothers and sisters. Then they all gather around, and I'm a little bit lost. And they're like, Father God in heaven, please. And it's just this beautifully articulated, totally off the cuff, no notes or anything. Just this beautiful prayer, a guy and assist the medical professionals whose wisdom you imbued in their training to, the ambulance, and it's just like, and here we say, and they're all, they're holding each other and kind of, getting the energy going through, and I was like, wow, like, I mean, because I can't, I feel like an idiot, but I cannot do that, and so finally I figured out how to like have a little scrap of paper, a cheat sheet, and then kind of try to memorize it, and of course, a lot of times you're in different settings, so you could kind of say the same prayer. But the prayer was something I felt a little weak on, because, like I said, it's not something that's non-Jewish in nature. I mean, like I said, it should be the kind of thing.
The vibe and the way in which it's done. Yeah,
so we're what they call liturgical. Liturgical means that you stick to the liturgy. Right. So we have Sefer Tehillim. Yeah. Whatever you could say, King David could said it better. So you just say what he said. And so, like, what do you think? Somebody sick, somebody whatever, it's all in there. So I tried to take that, have the Jewish perspective of, like, we really should be, like, masters at that. And it's kind of sad that we're, like, lost, you know. So I tried to get better in that. And now, like, happens all the time because it catches you at the last minute. We're just like, hey, before we start, Chaplain, lead us off in prayer. And then I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Almighty, my little cheat sheet. Almighty God, please.
It's like casually out of your back pocket. Everyone's heads down, so it works.
There's actually like a little mnemonic you could use, like kind of A, B, C, D, like, Almighty God, bless your children this day and every, and A, B, C, D, E, like A, B, C, D, E, F, like, you put these right. Like a mnemonic device. But that was one. And then also, of course, another thing that is this blessing of, I'm saying not just prayers, but, they have like this, a ceremony, and they have food there. So they don't touch anything, until the chaplain comes and blesses the food. Again, a concept that we're not really, we say a blessing, we don't like really bless. And then you see lots of soldiers. Americans tend to be quite religious, and the Army tends to attract a little more of the conservative, for traditional type Americans who pray a lot, go to church, and religious nature. So they believe that the religious figure should, they have a baby, say a blessing over the baby. Wife's pregnant, say a blessing, and she have you do it. It's not me. It's your job as the religious authority. Like you got the direct line. So I got these, like, what I thought at the time were kind of strange requests. I mean, just because again in Judaism it's more like, hey, you want to, like, your motorcycle to work well, then say a bracha on the motor, whatever. I don't know, say something to me. But I wouldn't ask somebody else to say it on my motorcycle. But that's a big thing on them. Is
you want a good parking spot? Do they call you out? They're like, Chaplain, I need a parking spot.
We're used to, like, you want a parking spot? You ready for a parking spot? God's listening. God's listening.
I told God, okay, I'm going to put the fillet on early.
They're big on this concept that somebody else should pray, which is actually also a Jewish concept. Somebody else should pray for the grandmothers.
So you're saying that they're all just really Lubavitchers?
Secret Lubavitchers, yeah. It's amazing, really, how much ties in with Judaism. It's just like kind of a different sort of angle to it, but it's kind of there. And even some of the terminology is like, for example, they'll say, in Judaism, they'll say like, it was a Lebedik oneg or something like that. So they have fellowship, and they'll say, we have like maybe the fry and the frum. They have the believers and the unchurched.
Right. Right. Yeah. So there's similar.
It's a lot of parallels,
Well,
So,
when you enlisted, though, let's get back onto the chaplaincy kind of topic,
right.
and find a lot of laughs along the way. Don't worry about that. But and you'll find out with his next question. When you enlisted, you didn't enlist. People don't expect to get deployed.
Right.
So what happened with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew there was a war in Iraq and Afghanistan going on, but it was like this giant army and military of 1 million, 2 million people with reservists and National Guard. What are the odds of like just this one person? But I hadn't been paying that close attention to the news, but there's this surge of troops going in Iraq that President Bush had ordered, which was 30,000 troops. Again, as a guy who didn't know what those numbers are, it doesn't sound like a lot, 30,000, that includes this one new, person. But when you want 30,000 soldiers to go to Iraq, and these people just got back, and these people are still there, and these people are about to go in 6 months, and you need another 30,000, you kind of take everybody who can. So anybody coming out of that chaplain school, they assigned to units that were getting deployed. I mean, the units were getting deployed, missing a chaplain. They just took every new chaplain and put them in these new units. So before I found that out, I thought I was very happy because we were getting assigned to Savannah, Georgia, which is a Jewish community, a 5-minute walk away. I mean, with CoL, Eruv, day school, store, restaurant. You couldn't believe that. This would be my first assignment, like a very easy transition into being like in the middle of nowhere. And but there was a reason why I went to that unit, because that unit was deploying to Iraq, and that in order to keep the 30,000 soldiers there, you needed to extend the people who were going for 12 months to 15 months.
Wow.
The only thing I was grateful for was that I wasn't already there thinking I was leaving at the end of 12 months and it coming up, and now got told I got to stay at least just before going. It's not going to be 12 months, it's going to be 15 months. So I was so in denial. I was like, in the Vietnam War, soldiers were sent there for 1 year. They counted down the 365 days. They went home. That was like this event that they remembered their entire life, this 365 days in Vietnam. And now you're telling me this 15 months, like 3 months longer than that, and I just couldn't believe. I figured like when things balance out, they'll start sending people home earlier, I guess. I don't know. Or you'll get the message that it's not 15 months anymore. It's
like that suddenly a miracle would occur.
Like in denial, because there's no way you can do this. And don't forget, when I joined this unit, this is their third deployment.
Oh, wow.
They had been in, this is 2007. These Afghanistan kicked off in 2001. Iraq was in 2003. So some of them had been, and this is the helicopter unit, a Black Hawk helicopter unit. So there are only 10 of these brigades, aviation brigades in the Army.
Wow.
One's always going to be in Europe. One's always going to be in Korea. One's going to be in the D.C. area flying around like high-level people. 3 of them were in Afghanistan, Iraq, or just gotten back or about to go. So basically, some of these got deployed in 2001 for a year, came back for 14 months, went again in 2003, came back for a year, went back in 2005, came back for a year in 2006, and now they're going in 2007.
So you're just in the Army.
I'm the new guy.
You don't really know what's going on. You're the new guy, and you get put with a unit with some of the best soldiers in the Army.
These like seasoned,
What was that like when you first got there?
I mean, it was for even the guys this was only going to be their second deployment. They were a little bit newer, so they had really just gotten back a year before. It was just this. It was like the morale was just so low. I mean, they liked flying helicopters. They liked their fellow soldiers. They even liked the Army, but like they had just, these young soldiers, had just gotten married or just had a baby or about to have a baby or, and now they'd been like deployed and then get back and then deployed again. And it's not going to end. Like for them in their mind, we're going to come back after this for a year and then go back again, you know, and they go, what did I get myself into? And here I'm like the one who just like, it's all new for me. So, and, you know, it's hard to even relate or boost the morale or anything because I didn't know what they were talking about. I mean, for me, it was just, you know, when you look at your pay, the pay, it's this big table. It's got your rank and then the number of years you've been in the military. So you look at like captain, and then you go, you know, there's a captain with 8 years, captain with 9 years. So I'm like captain, and it's like the first column, you know,
yeah,
captain. There's joke captain with 6 months. You know? So I felt bad because I couldn't understand. I couldn't really feel their pain, but you could feel the level of just like, you know, when I am out of this. And in fact, the Army recognized it too, because right when we were there that first year, they offered captains who like really sort of, you want to keep your captains in because they're going to be the future, you know, right. When they do their first 5 years, they're mandatory after West Point or whatever it is. Now, if they get out, those are the people you want to stay in for 20. So they offered this like blank check. Like you could pick, I think, 2 of 5 options. Go to graduate school, $30,000 bonus, pick the place where you're going to be assigned next. I mean, just one after the other. And even then, people were like, "I don't care. I'm getting out." So it was a really bad vibe. And sure enough, it went 15 months. I mean, the whole time I was like, at some point, we're going to get this call that we got enough people there and we're lowering it. And we got there Erev Shavuos. And let me tell you something, a year later on Shavuos, the second one, knowing you still had 3 more months after that, I mean, it took a toll. I mean, that was a challenge. Was they look at the chaplain as the guy who's talking to God all the time and has the best attitude and everything's Gams Latova. And, you know, when the chaplain has what they call a crisis of faith, you know, like a bad mood and he's bitter. It's funny, not funny at all, but one of the chaplain at the base when we arrived had been one of these guys who got extended, like just before his 12 months was over. So his daughter was getting married. So they had moved the wedding so that he could go on leave because they let everybody go home for 2 weeks. So they moved the wedding so he could go home to the daughter's wedding. So you walking around, and he was like the base chaplain, and he just looked like leave that guy. What's wrong? How do I know the story? Because like, what's wrong with that? He's like, oh, let me tell you about his daughter's wedding. You know, so like, and now so if you're the chaplain and you're, you know, just bitter, I mean, like it's hard to tell somebody else they should, you know, turn that frown upside down. You know.
Well, let's jump off those more bitter times and talk about some of the excitement. Some of the madness, some of the insanity that occurred when you first landed in Bing Bong for the first time. And what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, the good news about the aviation units, you know, these helicopter units, is they need to be around like airfields and big repair bays and places to park everything and mechanics.
Right.
So it was like a very big, not everybody, but it was like the headquarters. So quite large place. There weren't any really buildings. It was all tents and trailers. But it was large. It was very large. So that was good because when I started the Jewish community, you know, group up for Shabbos, you know, there were quite a number of people coming, and it built up and started getting bigger. That part was good. Of course, it wasn't like you're taking a shower with a bottle of water, like, you know, some people at some of these outposts. It was a pretty built up kind of place that had been constantly built up for the surge. So, I was impressed with how civilized it was. You could purchase internet. It wasn't very good, but you could purchase some Iraqi guys set up a satellite dish and have like 200 people sign on to the login thing, you know, for like $80 a month or something. You know? So it was that. There was the kosher food was because the Baghdad airport was right there. It was the central mail warehouse for all of Iraq, so mail came in very fast. So it could have been worse.
Did you have those experiences where inside the base, it's America, it's little American kind of vibes, and then right over there?
Yeah. I mean, that was wild, where every morning you would see these, the base was called Camp Striker because nobody knew what the striker meant. They thought it was Striker, like in soccer, striker, but it was Stryker, the striker vehicle that holds, I think, about 11 soldiers. It's like an armored vehicle that then goes out into combat with, this squad of infantry soldiers. So that was where, in the morning, just strolling with a cup of coffee, you just see these dozens of these Stryker vehicles with the back open, giant coolers, and all these guys loading up Gatorade and, beef jerky and whatever, and closing up and checking the lights and the this and everything, and then driving out of this base into Baghdad that you could actually practically hear, the sounds of stuff going on there. I mean, it wasn't like bombardment, but, explosions. I mean, it was a giant city that was in a war zone. And then at the end of the day, they stroll in and catch dinner and get a DVD that they watch on their laptop, and next day go out in like a commuter war almost, Like we're saying, the war was right there, but
the war was 9 to 5.
The war was 9 to 5, but for them, very kinetic. I mean, that was the surge. Was the first probably 3 months was like well over 100 killed in action American soldiers. So the chapel was just every day was like 3 and 4 memorial ceremonies for the first 3 months, and then General Petraeus had kind of calmed things down, and it went down to 50 and 40 and 30 and whatever. But very intense, but you wouldn't know it inside the walls of this base. It was this giant, like, USA with Burger King. You can do whatever you want with a trailer. You put in a trailer, you fix up the middle, and you have, like, this fancy barber shop. You make it a Taco Bell. You make it a McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. You make it Starbucks, whatever. Maybe it wasn't Starbucks, but the knockoff version, whatever. So, and then on the screen is CNN and, Fox News. And there's the mailbox, like a blue U.S. mailbox. You stuck your, 40-cent stamp into it. It was really, but right outside, these other soldiers were really going through a lot. Now, the aviation, they're flying over everything. And in fact, we had a few former infantry guys who would say, like, when I was, in Afghanistan, whatever, I'd always look up and see these helicopters flying. And go like, I want to be those guys. So that's why I got out of the infantry, and I'm in the, so. And then as the chaplain, you're, a bit, that's one of the reasons why I was put in this helicopter unit, because if the chaplain needs to get around, especially a Jewish chaplain, you're visiting people, you do it by helicopter. You're not going on a convoy.
Did you ever get in the Black Hawk or join your unit at any stage and get into a bit of a hot situation?
It's funny, like, it's so noisy that you wouldn't even know. But every once in a while, the crew chiefs, who are just the two guys that sit outside the sides. I mean, in peacetime, they're fixing the helicopter, checking things out. In this situation, their day job is to sit in the doors with these big 50 caliber machine guns. And and you're sitting there, it's so noisy, you can't hear yourself think. And just all of a sudden, the guy would just kind of jump up and go, was he shooting something he just thought was suspicious?
So you're just there having your cup of coffee on your helicopter ride, enjoying the serenity, and
you weren't having a coffee ride, but yeah, kind of like that. So and then of course when you landed, you just ran off of it. So I wouldn't have known. Now there was one. I had in my trailer. I had a roommate who was a pilot, and one day he had been on this, and by chance the crew chief was like Goldberg or something, Goldman or something, the crew chief. What happened was they were flying in, and somebody started shooting as they were landing, and one of the soldiers in the back was killed, and they all started shooting back at this guy, and he was killed. So they returned to the base, and everybody's like, see the chaplain, go to the chaplain, where's the chaplain, get the chaplain down here. So this Goldberg guy, or Goldman, I can't remember his name, he was chain smoking and all frazzled. He was like, he was right. Right. Actually, his weapon had jammed. That was probably why he was more. He probably could have stopped it in a second, but it just jammed after like one round. And after that, they changed the protocol where now you had to fire off a few rounds before you did anything. They fired off a couple rounds, made sure everything was working.
Being a chaplain, what was that experience like, having to, and what is that experience like speaking to guys who go through that experience, you're probably going to live with that picture in their mind for the rest of their lives.
I know, because, here's the, they're like, you can't know what it's like. I mean, the guy who could have in 1 second fired off a bunch of high caliber rounds and stopped some Iraqi insurgent who ended up killing an American soldier and frazzling everybody else out, and didn't because of his weapon jam, which is, kind of falls on him. It wasn't lubricated or whatever it was. So you can't, you could never relate, especially as a chaplain. I mean, you would have no idea. But a big part of being there is what the Army calls ministry of presence, which means you're there, you're a soothing, you're not all frazzled up yourself. Oh my gosh, give me a minute to, you're the voice of calm and everything God loves us and or everything happens for a reason and tell me what happened and cutting short the explanations and God must have wanted you to learn how to lubricate your weapon. Just let the guy just unload. And funny, sometimes just sit there, and active listening just means asking questions like what you're doing. And when they 2 hours later, the guy thank you so much. He's like, thanks so much. I feel so much better. Okay, something I said.
You walk off, you're like, well, did well today.
But interesting that probably 3 times in my career, I've met somebody who said, one time was a mom, and the other time was 2 soldiers. Like, I was suicidal. I don't know if you remember when I was talking to you, and someone like, when was it again? And they're like, and I was literally going to commit suicide. And when you said, and it just some random thing, I don't even remember. I don't even remember talking to the guy. And I don't even remember speaking to the guy. And he said, and that, gave me the, I thought, what? And, I wish I knew what it was, because I don't even sound, I think maybe you might have mixed me up with another chaplain, for all I know, but that was kind of, I guess I felt good about it.
Mixed you up with another chaplain. I think so. Sounds like I don't know.
But so I was wondering, wow, thanks so much. I wish it was some words of wisdom that I knew what it was. I use it again, but, so sometimes, but it kind of taught me that, sometimes it just, it's not like a recipe for it. A little, it's just kind of being there. I mean, nobody wants to be alone when they're going through something. And I've been to these suicidology conferences where a lot of times they have somebody speaking who survived a suicide, and they go through what they were going through, and it's like they were just waiting for somebody to say something, and they'd make a deal in their head. I'm going to do this. If anybody asks me if I'm okay, I'm just going to spill the beans and tell them what I'm about to do. And then nobody said anything. So I jumped and, happened to survive. But so, it's a mental health crisis going out there. So you can't take it lightly at all. There's somebody, and a lot of times you have no idea that they're going through that. Wow. So the chaplains may be a little bit lucky that sometimes people come in and say, hey, I'm going through. Now you're in Romania.
I'm sure you also quite a bit see on people's faces and are able to...
You do, but then again, the other thing that's part of it is that you need to really know the soldier, because they could just be like a really tired individual who just doesn't move their facial muscles, but if they're normally smiling, cracking up.
You just had a kid who just is tired from a long day, and you're like, are you okay?
That was all night.
It's like, dude,
that's the best day of my life. Yeah. So but now if you see this soldier every day and he's normally a crack up and happy guy, and now he's in the dumps now. So the thing is, as the chaplain position, as you make more rank, you're in less of those proximity to soldiers on a day-to-day basis. With them. So here in Romania, I'm in the base chapel. So if a soldier comes in, I've never seen them before or anything, so it's a little harder to get to know them. It's a little bit more of a brief kind of talk somebody off the ledge and then try to get them to somebody who could be there.
Who's there,
could stay with them, because I'm not really in a position at the chat. And then they leave 3-4 months later back to the States, and somebody needs to be aware of.
You need to connect them to someone who can have a long term.
But the chaplains are not by nature long term. If you need someone to go to once a week for a year,
of course. You're not psychologists.
Right. We have those.
Referred to. Getting back to Iraq, manischewitz.
Oh, that's sorry.
That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, no, do we already have that?
You already told me, but I think it'll be great for the chat anyways. There are a couple stories that you told me before that I'd love to hear again.
Yeah, that was when I first got to Iraq, of course, fish out of water, didn't know anything. I had brought at least a couple Shabbos, a handful of little juice boxes and challah rolls to get me like a week or two. But like I needed to like boots on the ground start finding like the real supply of this stuff for 15 months. So I went to the chapel on the base and went to the chapel assistant and I said, hey, like, how do you order kosher wine, So, or grape juice or wine, whatever. So he said, oh yeah, don't worry about it. The priest, he doesn't like the Catholic wine that they provide. So he buys kosher wine out of pocket, like his own money, because he just likes it better. Just don't worry about it. We got plenty of kosher wine. So I said, something doesn't sound right. Because like, I don't want to say this delicately, but like usually a guy wouldn't like prefer some of the kosher wine, the lower end kosher wine, over anything. But so I said, well, I'd like to see it, So he's like, yeah, sure, So he goes back in the supply room. He's got this big ring of keys. And there's a bunch of wall lockers. There's like pagans and latter, Mormons, and everybody's got a wall locker. And there's a big crucifix, on the wall locker, the Catholic supplies. And he, opens up the lock. He opens it up, and there's like floor to ceiling kosher wine. So I was like, I don't believe this. Like, I mean, if I could. So he said, well, it's the you got to go to the priest. So. I went and tracked him down, and I was like, something I never thought in my life I'd ever come out of my mouth. And I said, Father, can I have a bottle of your manischewitz? and yeah, that's that he was right.
So what was that like when he, communion? You have this much wine.
Right.
The bottle lasts you however long. Shabbos, Friday night, you fill up a full cup, overflowing for brothels,
and everybody gets
wine.
Well, it's funny because I've been to places where, I was in Kuwait a few years ago where the chapel had said there was no chaplain, but there was a Jewish group that met there, but just soldiers. So every week on Erev Shabbos, they had to go to the non-Jewish chaplain sergeant, and she would give them one bottle of this kosher wine, and then at the end they'd have to give her the empty bottle back. And the next week, so I get there and I'm like, "What's the big deal?" She's like, "Well, she just can't understand because this Catholic community, it was like 40 of them." And it takes 6 months to go through like a bottle of wine, little Dixie kids. And these are like 7 of them, and they were asking for like 3 bottles, So I said, well, there's a bit of truth to it. You got like, and the guy figured it out. He was like, this non-Jewish guy was 8-ounce cup. How many ounces is that? 8 ounce, the higher shear, times 7 people on one thing. On Pesach is 4 times. So it should be about 1.5 bottles, we like to, we don't like to like measure it with like a measuring stick, It's
kind of like we just pour, we have a drink. If we wanted a little more, we'll have a little more.
And it's like, so some of these things, what I did is, now, it took a while, but I do these smart sheets on the different holidays for Jewish soldiers to send to if one of their command more likely doesn't know anything about these things.
Right.
So in there is like my Pesach smart sheet. So I remember adding after that, it's common for, I felt bad putting grape juice or wine because, that kind of killed the whole, preferably wine. 4 cups that everybody should drink for the 2 Sedarim. So you show this, so it's like it's like a legit source of like we're not making this up. Yeah. It's like it's in writing.
On the topic of alcohol, when you were in Iraq, I assume if you're on the main base, you're probably with the Brits, with the Aussies, with the French, the whole 9 yards. Now I know in the U.S. military you can't drink,
right?
But in the Aussie, the Brits,
Italians,
you can have a couple. So, what was that like? What was that dynamic amongst the soldiers like when you see that differentiation?
Right. I mean, beyond the Jews, I mean, like, you saw, like, you went past the Italian compound or the British compound, and they're just like sitting out with their shirt off, drinking some toddies, and yeah, it was. I mean, one time, well, two times. Once, whenever I had a chance to bend a commander's ear, I would say like, when you say like everybody could get two beers, and give everybody like a wristband or something. And if somebody does something wrong, they get too drunk or they steal whatever, then you could take away their rights to drink the two beers. It would keep people just like automatically. When you'd say like you can't drink at all for 15 months, and somebody who's it's not the craziest thing that somebody drinks a beer every day, and now like for 15 months not a single ounce of alcohol, and you can't have one beer, and you can't even punish him because he's not, like if he does something wrong, because what are you going to take away? Take away his beer rights? So, and then you see
take a bullet out of the caliber,
right? And these other countries where they don't seem to have a problem with it. So that was a bit of a killer on a morale killer that people couldn't. I mean, I'm fine to go without it for that long. I'm a little bit not,
Yeah.
But I mean, I could see people who like really enjoy a beer or two, relax, and just being told it's off limits and very strictly off limits.
I guess also that vibe of seeing the other guys on the other side, not even on the other side, literally right over there.
With everything, beards, and other people can, if other people, like here in Romania, where, these 80 or 60 or 80 base staff get in their cars, drive off, do whatever they want, show up on Monday, don't even tell. And there's all these guys who have to ask permission, maybe get told they can't. You could say. I try to be very low key there in Romania for that reason. Like I don't say like, "Hey guys, have fun in your tent." I'm going back to relax in my bed. But the other thing was on that note was there was a train when we were back after Iraq in Savannah, Georgia, getting prepared to go to Afghanistan 14 months later. There was a training in Florida. And it happened to be on Super Bowl Sunday, which again, these commanders, they don't look at these they're very focused on the mission and the training and how this is going to happen. And they're not thinking of somebody's birthday or Valentine's Day or something like that. And then the chaplain, I feel, our role is say, hey, sir, did you notice like the training's over Valentine's Day and everyone's getting deployed in 3 months. This is like their last Valentine's Day for 2 years, and you picked that day to go to, something like you could have picked the day after
to hike a mountain. And
it was like Easter Sunday. Like, you wouldn't have noticed because it's not on your calendar.
Right.
But if you had like a religious calendar, it'd show. So to the Super Bowl Sunday, and I really feel like the role of the chaplain is to be that offline messenger to the commander, something that nobody else whose Army career is, hinging on how great of a soldier they are. A chaplain, like, that's your job, really, is the point. I mean, you might get yelled at, and it's not your job, but, you could try. So it was Erev Shabbos, and on Sunday was when this mission was starting. Super Bowl Sunday was when everybody was flying down to Florida for this mission. And so I called ahead, and this big training area had like a little rec center that was going to be playing the Super Bowl on widescreen, and beer and everything. So I sent an email to the commander just before Shabbos, and I was about to turn off my computer. And they're like, sir, because these helicopter pilots are in charge of this like $15 million aircraft with the lives of, a dozen soldiers. And I mean, this firepower is so powerful. Some of our equipment could start a war, and it would with probably 90% of the countries out there's Army and win, like just a squad of an Apache helicopter. It could probably take on 85% of the world's armies, And
what are you saying about our soldiers?
85%, not everybody. But now like the message we're sending is that like we don't trust you with drinking 2 beers while you're watching the Super Bowl the day before the training starts. I mean, like how bad would it be to just say everybody can drink 2 beers on Super Bowl Sunday, and then the next day you got to be clean. So he didn't answer, and I didn't see him for a couple of weeks after that. And the next time I saw him, he mentioned he was just telling me about things I do, and like I said, this is my first gig, my first 2 years in the Army, so like he had plenty of corrective, comments to make, and he's like, Yeah, he sent that email a few weeks ago to me and the sergeant major about everybody should have beer. Like they're talking about going to Afghanistan in a few months. And this is the training to get ready for Afghanistan. And like, the Super Bowl Sunday and beers and like, so it turned out that the brigade commander had happened to run into him. And when he said like, yeah, our guys are down in Florida doing this training. And he's like, when did it start? Like, well, last Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. I was like, well, I hope you got your guys a couple beers and had a chance to watch the game while they were down there, which he had done. He didn't tell me, but he had actually.
Oh, he did it for them?
He did it. He had actually told them they could drink some beer and watch the Super Bowl. So it's like, well, yeah, of course, sir. I mean, we're going to deny these guys the Super Bowl and a couple of beers, like, what are we, savages, So, like kind of.
It's a long fire way to say that he stole your credit.
So I was like, you can have it. I mean, that's my job. It's just like, but make him look good. I'm going to get promoted anyway because we're chaplains. We're not the same competitive.
I haven't heard any infantrymen say that about chaplains. No, never.
It's true. Yeah. So, sometimes I feel like that's, especially with these calendars that has happened a bunch of times. Is just something simple as like downloading religious holidays, including like, where I am, Romanian holidays, Bulgarian holidays, Christian holiday, Eastern Orthodox, Muslim holiday. You got that on your calendar. It's just stuff commanders just don't even think of. And what commander's going to download like Islamic holidays? You realize like that's the first day of Ramadan. I mean, as the religious affairs advisor to the commander, that is one of your roles. Something I started to notice like Tuesday, Ramadan starts, and we have 18, Muslim soldiers, and that's the day you pick, not knowing any better, like to have, a football game like a football game, and these guys are going to be fasting since, So you are, you're not just for the troops. You're actually the commander relies on you for that. Bend his ear.
Talking the Middle East, you mentioned your next deployment was Afghanistan.
Iraq.
No, you did.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So when you got me finally. You got me. You're listening. Yeah. So we got back from Iraq. We got back to Savannah, Georgia, and the new commander came in, and he said, "Listen, do the math. There's 10 aviation brigades in the Army. One just got back from Iraq. One just got back from Afghanistan. One's about to go to Iraq. One's about to go to Finland. One's in Korea. One's in Europe.
You're going to Afghanistan.
Just mark my words. Nobody said it, but give yourself till about October, and we're going to get the orders to go to Afghanistan or Iraq again. So let's start training now. So what happened was about in the summer, so just probably 90 days before this deployment to Afghanistan, the Army finally saw that, these guys are going to be on like their 5th or 4th deployment. And some have only been in the Army just long enough to get deployed 4 times. So they just did this scrub through everybody's files and saw everybody who had just not long before been deployed, pulled them. I mean, it was the worst timing because everybody had been training for this deployment and was just about to take their final leave before getting ready, and he got rid of the Army. Everybody left. The doctor, the chaplain, the XO, the sergeant major. Everybody got orders to go somewhere else that wasn't deploying. So it wasn't like the best timing for the commander who's now about to leave to Afghanistan with a bunch of officers that are brand new, didn't go through all the training he just spent the last year doing. But for me, there just happened to be the Jewish chaplain in Korea had left. There was nobody to take his place. They saw I was about to go to Afghanistan again. Probably less in my 3-year initial commitment of being in the Army. This was going to be my second, it was like 3 months at the chaplain school, come back for 1 month, 15 months in Iraq, home for a year, and then another year, let's say, in Afghanistan. So why don't you go to Korea instead? Mm-hmm. So Korea at the time was 1 year on your own or 2 years with your family. So my wife was like, hey, we already spent 15 months apart. We're going with you to Korea. So that ended up being changed my whole attitude about the Army. The Army was not all about combat and getting ready to go somewhere. It was, Korea is considered, it's an armistice agreement with the North, so it's not even a peace treaty. So those units it's kind of like a real world mission. I mean, they're there to protect Korea.
They're ready to go at all.
Yeah,
times.
they can't be sent anywhere. I mean, they're there to always be ready.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's good. Like, well, I mean, Asia. I'd never been to Asia. You know, you stand out like a sore thumb. You know, did not realize how. If I thought Iraq was challenging with kosher food and things like that, I mean, Korea. Like, I joke that you had to keep 6 hours walking down the street and smelling the smoke of the. I mean, you know, octopus and. I mean, there was nothing. There's nothing kosher. And what's more is Koreans don't bake anything. It's all rice with vegetables, rice with meat, rice with chicken, rice with fish. You know, so they just make rice with everything, and they sit on the floor and use chopsticks and eat. Mm-hmm. So like ovens, things you take for granted: ovens, yeast, flour, baking tins. You know, they just don't sell.
Can't go to a supermarket and buy it.
Yeah, they don't know what you're talking about because they just don't make bread. So now on the base is, of course, like a U.S., you know, commissary, whatever, you buy all the stuff you want. So in an ironic twist of fate, the Chabad Shaliach, who was like relatively new at the time, I think he'd been there a little less than a year, he needed some help. He needed some help with those stuff. So I was like the guy who supplied the I can't say it was more on camera, but like I was the guy who kind of supplied the for a while until he could figure out how to get like his own supply of because they're very tight with meat coming into the country.
Yeah, Australia is similar.
Because they have trade agreements with Australia that are very tight. You know,
well, because when you've got an island country, the diseases and
they got to keep them. Yeah,
exactly. There's always that the idea that we've heard that Koreans learn Gemara.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much like the Shakli V'Tarya. It's more like the lessons of the Gemara, like and a Gadita and stories. And yeah, I even have somebody gave me. There are these books. I mean, you wouldn't know it because it's in Korean, but if somebody pointed it to you and you opened it up and there's little pictures and stuff, and they're like, hey, wait a second, that's the story that's in the Sectus, whatever, you know. So they're it's a very Jewish friendly, considering how different it is. And there are literally no Jews.
I was going to say many of them probably never met a Jew.
Right, the only Jews who are in Korea it's about 300 of them or so in Seoul mostly. They're either working for teaching English. I mean, like Jewish Westerners who move there for a year or two to make some money teaching English, or people who work for the big conglomerates like LG and Kia and Samsung and whatever. And again, they're just there for a limited time. And then the occasional Korean man who married, you know, a Jewish woman, and like you have like what looks to be a Korean person who's actually Jewish. Every once in a while you run into people like that. So it's very small, but they really appreciate Jewish wisdom and lifestyle and family. So they're big into family and education. And also it's a very kind of a tznius. They don't wear bathing suits and like they're not half dressed at all. They're very covered up. And of course you bow instead of shaking hands. So
automatically,
you meet somebody, you bow, and you're very respectful of age. Even somebody who's 8 months older than you is the elder. You know, it's the kind of Confucianism. It puts a lot of focus in that relationship between elder and younger. So one of the first questions they would ask somebody, not with Westerners, they would know it's probably too weird, but with each other, the first thing they do is they start. One of them speaks in the formal tense. And then one that was asked is, okay, do you mind if we speak in informally, like how old are you? I'm 2 years younger than you. Do you mind if we speak in the more informal tense? But it's very focused on this elder thing. So again, you know, Yiddishkeit kind of lends to, other than the fact that it's going to be a little difficult to, keep the faith.
So what was the dynamic of your service in Korea?
Yeah, that was unbelievable because there really was no other option. Like you're in Europe and these other places. I mean, soldiers, there are, Chabad houses, there are shuls. In Korea, there was just this Chabad house that had just started. And because Seoul is such a densely populated place, you don't find houses. I mean, there are all these gigantic, 800, cookie cutter beehive apartments that make a Manhattan studio look like a mansion, like tiny little apartments. So if you're trying to run a Chabad house, you can't be on like the 17th floor, 1187A, So there's a very small neighborhood in Seoul that has like ambassadors' residences. The CEO of Samsung, that's where they live, and they're not giant houses, but at least they're single family homes, 3 bedrooms, and like a little tiny backyard. So that happened to be walking distance from the base. So what we do, so what people do is Friday nights on the base would have, on a low day, 40 people would show up, Koreans, these English people, Israelis, the Israeli embassy people, somebody's Israeli ambassador, and then on other events like Purim, of course, people would pack into the Chabad house. You'd maybe rent a place, Rosh Hashanah, things like that. So it was a great dynamic, and we knew each other, and it was a symbiotic relationship. Tisha B'Av, he would read Eicha. I got him his yeast, his mayonnaise, so it was a great time, and we're still in touch.
That's brilliant.
Right.
That's brilliant.
But it was more challenging for him, probably, the Chabad Shliach, because he didn't have the
didn't have that structure.
Right. We had this U.S. base. We had an American post office box.
Yeah.
We have the commissary.
You're little America. Essentially it's American territory.
Yeah.
On there.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Let me switch topics a little bit and ask what it means for you to be a Jew serving the U.S. military and serving the United States, as opposed to what growing up we always hear serving the IDF or anything like that.
Well, first off, if you do happen to accidentally end up in the U.S. military or see it from the inside, know somebody who is, the values, it's just unbelievable. This freedom of religion that we have in America is real. You do not see that anywhere else. People have things that are similar, but for example, there was a chaplain assistant I met a couple years ago in Germany who was he was Hungarian. He was Hungarian? I think he was Romanian. He was a Romanian citizen. He moved to America 5-10 years before, became an American citizen, joined the U.S. Army. But before, when he was 18 years old, he was serving in, I just can't remember if it was Romania or Hungary, but he was from Transylvania, which is, this disputed area of, Romanians consider Romania, Hungarians consider Hungary.
They have the vampires.
Yeah, the Dracula's castle. That's they take trips there. But so I can't. It's good that I don't remember because it hides the identity of this guy. But he was one of them in the other country. So they would literally have on the weekends. He was doing his draft service in the army, and they would line everybody up in a formation just before the weekend. And everybody who had the opposite name, like if it was Hungary, it was everybody with Romanian names. And if it was Romania, it was everybody. I can't remember which one it was. You all have to stay behind and clean the base and and wash dishes. Or you can't complain or you make your life even harder. You just suck it up, and you're 14 months you have to be in the army, whatever you just do it. But I couldn't believe it. I said, that's just outright racist, nationalist, whatever. But it's the kind of things you see, or so when they come in the U.S., for example, that a year and a half, just before this Romania gig, I was supposed to go to Afghanistan for the first time, because each time Afghanistan, which everybody's been to Afghanistan, I've almost gone 3 times. This was going to be the actual time I was going to go, the Pesach before last. And I got the orders saying, Afghanistan for Pesach. So first you report to Texas and you get your shots and your medical stuff. And then you go, I was in the 2-week going to Afghanistan. Now, the only thing is I was reading the news, watching the news, and see we are closing up Afghanistan. And, it just seemed like, is anyone going to even be there? I'm watching the news and literally just plane loads of soldiers and leaving. And now I'm not even going to be there, it's in a month.
2021.
It's not 22. This is 21. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 21. Yeah, because then in August they left. Last
week. The leaving of
So this is Pesach a few months before leaving.
What we're referring, just so that we get.
Yeah. So this would have been the last Pesach. And I was kind of a little bit excited to mark, 20 years earlier was the first one there. This is going to be the last Pesach. That would be the same. Might only be 2 people there or 1 person there, but at least it would be historical. So I'm asking the chief of chaplain's office. I'm like, so like I'm talking to a chaplain there, and he's like, there's like chapel doesn't even have anything in it. Like they've literally shipped every book to other chapels. They've taken all the chairs out. I mean, there's nobody there, and you're sending me to Afghanistan. Like, I'm okay if it's a small crowd, but I'm just wondering if it might be like anybody. Like the chaplain there is saying, like, he's like on the next flight himself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So so he did that. He calls me. He's like, okay, let me find out. Where are you going to find out? Like, well, ask, and we don't want you to go if nobody's going to be there. So he comes back and calls me the next day. He's like, yeah, you're going. It's Afghanistan. It's on. I checked. It's the real deal. We're tracking the numbers too. And so I said, okay, but like, I mean, just so you'd be cool. Like if I end up, it's like nobody there, and I'm like sitting by myself. I'm eating a piece of matzah. So he's like, listen, it doesn't matter if one person shows up. It doesn't matter if nobody shows up. It shouldn't be said that somebody wanted to celebrate the Passover holiday and the U.S. government didn't allow for that. So even if it's just you, and it costs $50,000 to get there, you go and celebrate Passover in Afghanistan. So I was like, I guess I'm finally, after 20 years, going to Afghanistan. Well, to kill the story, I don't know if you want to edit that. Well, to kill the story is that about a week later, he said, check your email, and there was amended orders. Said, change to Afghanistan to Qatar. I guess maybe they did figure out, like, you know what, there is not going to be anybody there. So, but it made a great story. It would have been fun to go there and get like one guy out of Woodworks who's like, thank God you're here.
Would have given me some good content for the social media.
Right. It's a good story. But so.
Do you think you could quickly list off all of the places that you've been since joining the military?
Right. I just know that that Pesach, that COVID Pesach, was the only time. The one before was actually COVID. That was the one that was like we were finishing COVID, but Afghanistan was closing down. But that was the only time I'd been Pesach I spent at home because that's right. I was actually on orders to go to Afghanistan the year before, but COVID shut everything down. They said all orders are canceled, not just you. But yes, we started out in Savannah, Georgia. I reported to Savannah, Georgia, and about a month later went to Iraq. Kuwait, and then Iraq, then back to Kuwait, and then back to Savannah, Georgia. Then we then went back to Iraq just for Pesach the next year. It was like they didn't have anybody to go, so I went back to Iraq for about a month. Then came back and went right to Korea. And we did have a stint for about a week in Japan, but then Korea for 2 years. Then Germany, and then Germany for 3 years. Then Bavaria. Then I stayed in Germany another 3 years on the other part of the country, in Kaiserslautern and Rhineland-Pfalz by Frankfurt. Then, and while I was there, 2 more Pesach trips to Iraq. Because Iraq is I guess can't get out of Iraq. There'd always be 2 of us. One guy would go to Afghanistan, and I was the guy who lived in Iraq. And then, hang on, then after, then that was, then like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. These are only Army assignments, not on vacation.
Yeah.
Not on vacation.
No, obviously.
Right.
That's the reason I'm asking, because the point is to show that you join the Army.
You see the world.
Whoopsie daisy.
Right.
Next thing you know it, bang.
You see the world, yeah. And that's not even like, those weren't even like necessarily like grab your bags and go. Those were just like, we have people there. Yeah, Italy, Qatar, Kuwait a bunch of times. Now Romania and Bulgaria, we have a double base. And then Poland again. Yeah, Germany a bunch of times again. I guess I kind of lose my track. A couple of times in the U.S. for very short. But I mean, I joined the Army 17 years ago, and I was assigned to that Savannah unit for 10 months. Otherwise, I haven't even been in the United States. So, like, you join the Army and don't see America.
What would you say is the most the story that stands out to you the most from your years and experience?
The Pesach before last. No, I mean last Pesach. Last Pesach, Easter and Pesach fell at about the same time. So in Romania. So the Army sent an additional Army priest, Catholic priest, for Easter, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, all the Holy Thursday, Lent, all the different Catholic holidays to come in and help with that. And so I was talking to him when he arrived, and he's from Philadelphia. And, we were talking about, we would just kind of bond a little bit, Catholics and Jews, because they're sort of the Christian version of Jews. They have their halacha kind of, and their rituals, and very devout people who cling to the mass and go to it every day. And so he was saying, it's funny that he his entire life people thought he was Jewish. Just something about his face, and he had this kind of Philadelphia accent and just the look about him, But so he said one time when he was a new priest, he was in church about to deliver the mass, and this lady in the front row, and it was a real traditional Catholic thing. She stands up and she says, "Hey, he's Jewish. The priest is Jewish." Right in front of everybody. They were like, "Where'd you get that?" "Hey, lady, sit down." What is she, crazy? Who says that to a priest in the middle of it? So he's like, I get these stories every once in a while, people. So what happened, though, was that, he says, to make it crazier, was that when I was 8, how to get into the priesthood was that he was adopted as a baby into a devout Catholic family who when he got a little older, it was clear he's the oldest son, goes into the priesthood. His family, just couldn't be prouder that they have a son who's a Catholic priest. And he said when he was 18, he met his, while he was in this seminary, or whatever you call it, monastery, seminary, he met his birth mother, his biological birth mother, who had given him up as a baby. And she's still kind of had issues. He couldn't really continue having a relationship with her, but he just wanted to meet her face to face. And in their long talk of catching up, since he had first time seeing her, it came up how people thought he was Jewish. Every once in a while would mistake him for being Jewish. And she said, "Well, it's funny because, I'm Jewish. You really are Jewish." So he was like, "Yes, I was very interested. So I have a whole Jewish side of my." So listen, what are you doing for Pesach tomorrow? Is there any way, after Holy Thursday Mass, you can maybe stop by the Pesach Seder, and have some matzah. It'd be fun, So it's not only in the army kind of thing where the priest is Jewish,
And he joined you for Seder.
In the end, he had some death in the family. It's always some killer, and he had to go. He just left and went back to the States on emergency leave, so he never came to the Seder. But
you should work out where he is, trying to get him for the next year.
Yeah, I can look him up.
Just rock up, and I'm like, I was sent here.
Right, that's a good idea.
Is there any idea or message that you want to give while the camera's rolling to Jews out there thinking of joining the U.S. military, or rabbis out there who are trying to find a way to do a little bit more?
Yeah, For anyone who can become a chaplain, and you don't even have to be a rabbi, you could be, we have a chaplain candidate program where you start off and you finish yeshiva and the army courses, at the same, a little bit of army course, a little bit of yeshiva, and then the end, when you get your smicha, then you become a full-fledged chaplain, which you can do in the reserves too, which is not, you can still live in your house in New Jersey or whatever, drive to the Army Reserve Center. But it really is, if you've got we all should have the skills. We all should have the skills, but at least if you've got the paperwork, you've got whatever paperwork, it's a bunch of paperwork, but if you've got it, then you should seriously consider it, because we have a huge shortage. I only have slightly more than a dozen Jewish chaplains in the active duty Army, and a handful of others. And we need you, and the Jews need you. It's there's nobody else. If you're doing a Pesach Seder in Mihail Koganiciano, Romania, I can guarantee you, if you're not there, there's not going to be another Seder that they could go to, an option. Or whatever it is, lighting a menorah. If you don't set up that menorah in Rzeszów, Poland, in the sports arena in Rzeszów, Poland, where 1,000 82nd Airborne troops are hunkered down, waiting to see if Russia crosses the berm into Poland. if you're not there putting that menorah there, nobody's going to be putting more menorah there. So, we need you. And as far as soldiers go, if you're strong in your Yiddishkeit and you could, just around the people who just don't know, that's all. Nobody's malicious, but just you're something new, So if you're able to just present yourself and be a mensch, it's not. It's you. I haven't met anybody who regretted joining, and that's a key. You don't mean anybody who says, like, I'm just waiting till my 3 years are up, and then on April 2nd, 2028, I'll take this off for the last time and never look back, So that's my, kind of sign of, retention sign.
And perspective.
Exactly.
Thank you very, very much, Faye. Very much appreciated. Thank you for your service. Look forward to many more.